My name is Emily. I'm 33 years old and 2 months ago I believed my life was about to end, but not for the reason you're probably expecting. I thought it would end because of a tumor growing in my abdomen, a silent monster weaving itself through nerves and vessels I didn't even know I had. I was partially right. Something did die on that operating table, but it wasn't me. It was my marriage. It started with a phone call on a rainy Thursday afternoon, the kind of drizzle that turns sidewalks into mirrors. I had been feeling bloated for months, brushing it off as stress or maybe my metabolism slowing down. I was busy running a boutique marketing agency downtown, always living off caffeine and skipped lunches. When the cramps came, sharp, sudden, stealing my breath, I finally went to urgent care. They ran blood work, ordered imaging. Then came the call. Emily, this is Dr. Patel. I'm afraid the scans show a sizable mass. It's pressing against several organs. We'll need to operate soon. I remember gripping the edge of my kitchen counter, knuckles white. The room spun slightly. My cat, Leo, twined around my legs, purring obliviously. The doctor kept talking. Risks, referrals, timelines. My heart heard only fragments. Tumor. Surgery. Possible complications. You'll want your family close. I told Jake that night over takeout. His reaction was strangely muted. He hugged me, rubbed small circles into my back, but his eyes drifted over my shoulder like he was watching something on TV behind me. We'll get through this, he said, voice almost too steady. I'm here. Always. He even pressed his forehead to mine the way he did back when we first started dating, back when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. That night I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling fan. I thought about vows. In sickness and in health. We'd gotten married 5 years ago in a tiny ceremony on a beach in Florida. He cried more than I did. I believed, truly believed, that I'd found someone who would be there in every chapter of my life. I had no idea I was already in the final pages of our story. The next 3 weeks were a blur of consultations, pre-op blood draws, EKGs, chest x-rays, insurance phone calls. Jake drove me to half the appointments. The other half, he claimed, work meetings he couldn't miss. I tried not to resent that. We had bills after all. Sometimes in the car he'd squeeze my knee. Sometimes he was silent the whole ride, tapping restlessly on his steering wheel at stoplights. I chalked it up to fear. Stress. I told myself he loved me. He was just overwhelmed by the possibility of losing me. And I was terrified too. I'd Google survival rates at 2 a.m. under the covers, my phone's blue glow painting horror across my face. 70%, 50%, so many ifs. But I always shut it off, rolled toward Jake's warm back, and pressed my cheek between his shoulder blades. I needed his heartbeat to lull mine into calm. He'd sigh, half asleep, and mutter, "It's gonna be okay, Em." The evening before the operation, we sat on our balcony with 2 glasses of cheap Cabernet. The city lights blurred through humidity. I rested my head on Jake's shoulder, inhaling his scent, a mix of aftershave and faint sawdust from the shelves he'd been building in the garage. "Promise me something," I whispered. He tensed slightly. "What?" "If something happens. If I don't make it. Find a way to be happy. Really happy. Promise me that." He pulled away just enough to look at me. His eyes were shiny. "Emily, don't talk like that. Promise me." A long silence. Then, "Okay. I promise." He kissed my forehead, but his lips were cold. The morning of surgery, I was all nerves. They wheeled me into pre-op on a stiff gurney that squeaked over every seam in the floor. Nurses wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm, placed sticky leads on my chest. A bright overhead light hummed, buzzing through my skull. Jake stood at my side, holding my hand. His thumb rubbed slow circles over my knuckles. I focused on that touch, trying to memorize the pressure, the temperature, the faint callus where he once burned himself on a grill. "I love you," I said. He didn't reply, just squeezed my hand tighter. His jaw flexed, eyes darting to the door. A nurse appeared, cheerful but brisk. "Ready, Emily. We're going to give you something to help you relax. A cold flush surged through my fore. My vision narrowed. I kept staring at Jake, but his face seemed to pull away from me like a boat drifting from shore. The last thing I saw was him letting go of my hand. As anesthesia pulled me under, my mind split into jagged images. Wedding vows whispered on salt-sprayed sand, Leo chasing moths in our hallway, Jake's eyes haunted by shadows I hadn't wanted to see. Then there was only blackness. Not peaceful. Not quiet. Just blank. Somewhere in that void, a tiny voice began to whisper. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't God. It was my own pulse, defiant and raw. Hold on. I didn't know then what was happening outside the sterile glow of the operating room. That while scalpels worked to save me, somewhere across town, my husband was bending on one knee. Part 2. How did I not see it coming? They say hindsight is cruel because it uses perfect vision to dissect imperfect choices. The hours I spent unconscious on an operating table were nothing compared to the brutal clarity that came later, lying in that hospital bed, replaying every moment I had chosen to trust Jake. 1. The little ways love lies to you. In the weeks before the surgery, I'd felt Jake drifting. Little things I shoved aside as normal stress. He stopped leaving his phone face up on the table. He worked late 3 nights in a row, claiming a new product launch. He forgot my favorite coffee order, something he'd memorized years ago. I rationalized every detail. Love does that. It builds stories on your behalf. He's tired. He's worried about me. He's carrying this burden too. But that script was written by the woman who still saw him as the same guy who danced with me barefoot in our living room the first day we moved in, blasting Elton John from a phone speaker because we couldn't afford a stereo yet. 2. A marriage of gentle illusions. We'd met when I was 25, through mutual friends at a housewarming party. Jake had this crooked grin, as if he was constantly one thought away from teasing you. That first night we talked on the patio for hours, passing a cheap bottle of rum back and forth, making up constellations. He walked me to my car at 3 a.m. and texted me before I even got home. Made it safe. Because I already want to see you again tomorrow. That's the text that started it all. 5 years of marriage layered on after that. Sunday pancake mornings. Road trips where we argued over playlists. Quiet evenings sprawled on the couch, sharing memes. No giant fireworks, but a million cozy sparks. Thought that was real. I thought it was enough. 3. The first cracks. About a year before my diagnosis, things started to dull. Not explode, just dull. Jake's hand lingered less on the small of my back. He answered questions in monosyllables, sometimes forgetting the context of our last conversation. Sex became perfunctory or absent. I told myself it was normal. Long-term relationships went through seasons. Besides, I wasn't always easy to live with. My anxiety spiraled around deadlines, and I tended to micromanage every grocery list. Still, sometimes I'd catch him staring off after reading a text, smiling a smile that didn't quite reach me. I'd joke, "Who's making you blush like a teenager?" He'd roll his eyes and kiss my forehead. I believed it, because belief was safer. 4. A business trip that wasn't. 6 months before the surgery, Jake flew to Denver for what he said was a regional manager summit. 3 days, 4 nights. He barely called. When I asked why, he blamed spotty hotel Wi-Fi. The second night I FaceTimed him. The call picked up pointing at the ceiling. I heard a muffled laugh, female, and what sounded like the clink of a wine glass. He snatched up the phone so fast his face blurred. "Sorry. Room service. They just spilled my water." I swallowed the pit in my stomach. Why would I accuse him? Jealous wives were pathetic. That's what the voice in my head hissed. Trust was a pillar, wasn't it? I hung up, forced a smile, and texted, "Miss you. Can't wait for you to come home." 5. The slow gaslighting. In the months after, little patterns formed. He kept showering twice a day. Changed his passcode. Grew defensive over small questions. "Where were you?" Turned into landmines. He'd slip, saying something like, "We tried that place downtown." then quickly correct to, I mean me and Rob. I laughed it off. Convinced myself I was paranoid. We even hosted a barbecue for his co-workers, where he grilled steaks and wrapped an arm around my waist the whole evening. Everyone called us the cute power couple. The lies were soft as feathers. That's how they nest. 6. The diagnosis that distracted us both. When I first started having pain, I didn't mention it to Jake for weeks. I thought it was a digestive thing. Too much iced coffee and skipped salads. By the time the doctor said mass, my marriage was already paper thin. Ironically, the tumor brought us close again. Or so I thought. Jake was attentive, driving me to appointments, texting midday. How's my brave girl? I mistook that for love reigniting. I didn't see it was guilt management. In bed one night, he cradled me, forehead against mine. Nothing's taking you away from me. You hear me? I closed my eyes and believed him. Because hope is louder than suspicion. 7. The morning of my surgery. Hours before they prepped me, Jake made US breakfast. Eggs, burnt toast. He never could time the toaster. He set a plate in front of me with 2 strawberries sliced into rough hearts. They're ugly, but they're yours, he said, laughing. I laughed too, tears stinging. He kissed my temple. That was the last real moment I had before everything fell apart. Because while I lay unconscious on a stainless steel table, heart exposed, Jake sat in a dim restaurant with candlelight reflecting off wine glasses. Not a worried husband pushing food around a plate, but a man with a ring box in his pocket. 8. Why betrayal hurts more than the knife. People think the physical pain is the worst. The scalpel sliding through layers, the clamps stretching tissue, the beeping that signals your life hangs on someone else's hands. Well, that's not what destroys you. It's waking up after stitches puckering across your skin, and realizing the person you trusted to wait on the other side was somewhere else entirely. Making a promise to another woman under chandeliers, while your blood still dried under a surgeon's gloves. It's not the tumor that breaks you. It's the revelation that the tumor wasn't the only invader inside you. 9. A storm still waiting. When I narrate this now, people expect rage, maybe a plate thrown against a wall. But in those first hours post-op, I was still blissfully ignorant. I woke up thinking I had beaten the biggest monster in my life. I didn't know the real monster was sitting next to my bed, thumb absently scrolling through congratulatory texts from someone he had just proposed to, someone he thought would replace me. But my story wasn't over. Because soon, secrets would tumble out, like gauze unraveling from a wound too long hidden. And I would decide that death didn't win. But neither would he. Part 3. Waking up wasn't the miracle I thought. They say waking up after a major surgery is a miracle. That to open your eyes, to feel air in your lungs again, is something to be celebrated with tears of gratitude. And for the first hour I believed it. Won the first breath back. When consciousness crept back to me, it was like surfacing through syrup, thick, slow, sweet with relief. My eyelids fluttered against a blinding white. The ceiling tiles came into focus. I heard monitors, soft beeping, and 4 pumps somewhere near my shoulder. My chest felt tight, every inhale a mild betrayal of what breathing used to be. But it was breath. I was alive. My brain hummed. You did it. We're here. I wanted to smile, but my lips cracked. I wanted to ask for Jake. My throat burned from the tube that must have been there hours before. A nurse noticed my flutters. Emily, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can. Did weakly. Her answering grin was pure sunlight. Good girl. You're a fighter. 2. Looking for my person. Took another hour before they let visitors back in. I asked, voice little more than paper scraping glass. Is my husband here? The nurse nodded. He's in the waiting area. I'll send him in. And there he was moments later, stepping into my dim hospital room. I expected relief to flood his face, tears maybe, a whispered prayer of thanks. Instead he paused at the door. His eyes were wide, almost fearful. Then he pasted on a smile, thin, unsteady. Hey, look at you. His voice cracked, but not with emotion I recognized. I tried to reach for him. My arm moved inches before gravity won. He didn't rush forward to take it. Instead he sat slowly in the chair by my bed, fidgeting with the hem of his sleeve. 3 words that didn't match. "You're okay," he said, more like a statement to himself than a greeting. I whispered, "Hurts, but I made it." His smile twitched. "Yeah, you did." We sat in fragile silence. The only sound was the 4 pumps' steady chug, the occasional chirp of my oxygen saturation monitor. Jake tapped his foot. His knee bounced. I'd never seen him so unable to sit still. "Did they say it all gone?" I rasped. "They got most of it. You'll still need some follow-up stuff. We'll tackle that when we get there." I tried to read his eyes. He kept glancing at the door, the hallway, his phone. Not once did he brush a hair from my forehead. Not once did he kiss me. That was when the first crack ran through my fragile new world. For a phone call he didn't want me to hear. Later that night, long after visiting hours ended, I woke to the low murmur of Jake's voice in the corner of my room. He was on the phone. My pain meds made me heavy, but some instincts sliced through narcotics. "I know. I didn't think she'd." A pause. "No, I can't talk about this now." "Is awake." "Yes, awake. I'll call you tomorrow." My blood iced. Awake. Shouldn't that word be spoken with relief, not dread? Jake turned, startled, as if he thought I was asleep. His mouth opened, closed, then he slipped the phone into his pocket. "Work stuff," he said. Too quickly. Too practiced. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to so badly. So I nodded, let my eyes drift closed again, even though inside, questions pounded harder than my pulse. 5 Lena's strange visits. The next day Lena came by. She stood at the foot of my bed, clutching a single sunflower. Her smile was forced, her eyes slick. "You're incredible, Em. The doctors didn't think. I mean, it's just so good to see you." She set the sunflower on my tray table, hands trembling. When she leaned in to hug me, her body felt stiff, like hugging a statue that might shatter. "Jake will take good care of you," she whispered in my ear. "Just be patient with him, okay?" I tried to laugh, but my chest seized. Why wouldn't I be? Her eyes darted to the door. "No reason. I just have to go." And she was gone. I watched the petals of the sunflower tremble in the air she left behind. 6. The nurses start to slip up. Nurses talk. Always. They don't mean to, but a hallway is a thin veil for secrets. That afternoon, 2 of them stood just outside my room, charts in hand. "Is that the one whose husband signed off already?" "Yeah." They were prepping palliative options. Amazing she pulled through. He must be relieved, right? You'd think. He didn't even stay the first night she woke up. Said he needed sleep. Their voices faded, but not before slicing me open deeper than any surgeon. Signed off. Palliative. My hands went to my chest, tracing the bandages that covered the literal wounds, wishing they could cover these new ones. 7. My body recovers faster than my heart. By day 4 post-op, I was walking laps around the ICU corridor, pushing my 4-pole. My body was mending, staples in my side tight and itchy. But inside, everything was unraveling. Jake only came once a day. His visits were clipped, eyes darting to his phone more than my face. When he thought I wasn't looking, he typed furiously, screen turned just out of my view. Once I caught a glimpse, a heart emoji, a sentence that began with "I can't believe," before he tucked it away. That night, in the stale hospital dark, I wept until my stitches throbbed. The first drop of truth. Rose, my night nurse, found me like that. She pulled up a chair, held my hand. "You're not alone, Emily. Whatever it is, people come back from darker places than this." Her kindness cracked something. I blurted, voice hoarse. "Do you think he ever wanted me to survive?" She didn't answer. Nurses know more than they ever say. Instead she squeezed my hand, eyes soft with truths she couldn't voice. 9. Planting seeds of my own investigation. By the time morning lit my window with gold, Resolve burned hotter than any infection. My body was battered, but my mind was a scalpel now. Sharp, precise. I decided right then. When I left this hospital, I would find out everything. I would dig through call logs, bank records, whispers in coffee shops. I would no longer be the girl who trusted because it was easier. Because some wounds needed stitches. But some needed to be cut wide open so the rot could be scraped out. 10. The miracle no one counted on. Doctors marveled at my recovery. They charted it as unexpected neurological resilience. What they didn't realize was my brain had survived because it had unfinished business. My heart had refused to stop because it needed to know who Jake truly was. As monitors beeped serenades of survival, I whispered to the beeping machines. He tried to end my story. But my heart decided to write a new chapter. Part 4. When the knives finally faced outward. Some women find out their husbands are cheating by lipstick on a collar. Others by strange hotel receipts. Or perfume lingering on the passenger seat. Me. I found out while recovering from a surgery that was supposed to end my life. Turns out, nearly dying gives you a certain fearless clarity. On the day I went home, they discharged me on a Tuesday. The sun outside felt obscene, bright, warm, shining on a life that still looked the same even though mine had twisted into something unrecognizable. Jake drove me home, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles bleached. I studied him from the passenger seat, memorizing how he wouldn't meet my eyes at red lights. The radio played low. He didn't hum along. At the house, he unloaded my overnight bag like it was a stranger's luggage. "You okay?" he asked, almost impatient. "Peachy," I said, voice flat. Leo, my cat, was my only comfort. He wound around my ankles, purring desperately. I scooped him up, burying my nose in his fur to hide the tears. Jake watched from the hallway, phone already back in his hand. To Lena's mistake. The next morning, Lena came over, clutching a Tupperware of pasta I didn't ask for. She fluttered nervously around the kitchen. "You look so much better than I expected. It's incredible." I wanted to be gracious, but something in me had hardened. Why wouldn't I look better? Didn't think I'd still be here, Lena. Her face flamed red. She nearly dropped the container. "No. I didn't mean." I waved her off, exhausted. "Just leave it on the counter." When she hugged me goodbye, her phone slipped from her purse, landing face up on the tile. A preview of a message glowed. "Jake. I'll handle her later. I just need you to trust me a little longer." My breath froze. Lena scrambled for the phone, but I'd already seen. Our eyes met in a silent war. She fled so quickly she forgot her keys. I locked the door behind her with shaking hands. 3 digging for rot. That night, when Jake fell asleep on the couch, after claiming he was too tired to come to bed, I tiptoed to his jacket draped over the chair. His phone was inside the pocket, still warm from his hand. No passcode. That almost broke me, the arrogance. The sheer confidence he wouldn't be caught, or maybe the belief that even if he was, I'd still be too weak to act. I sat on the floor with Leo in my lap, scrolling through message after message. Each line was a stab wound. "Jake. Dinner tomorrow, same place. Bring the ring. I want to see how it fits in the light." Her. "I still can't believe you proposed while your wife was in surgery. You're so brave." Jake. "Brave or cruel? I guess we'll know when she's gone." Tears dripped onto the screen, smearing the text. I didn't wipe them. I needed to drown in this truth. The woman's name was Chelsea. He had proposed the night of my surgery. The ring I thought he bought for me years ago. He was now sliding it onto her hand. For my heartbeat rebelled again. I read until the phone blurred, my hands trembling so violently I almost dropped it. Every heartbeat felt like it was trying to crawl out of my chest, furious at the betrayal. The irony was savage. My body had fought to keep living under a surgeon's knife, only to discover the person it fought for was preparing a life where I was a ghost. For a minute I wondered if I should have just let go on that table. But Leo nudged his head under my palm, purring hard enough to vibrate my bones. That cat had waited for me to come home. Maybe my heart hadn't fought for Jake. Maybe it fought for me. For small, loyal creatures like Leo. For future nights where I'd learn how to breathe without swallowing poison. 5. Confrontation in the kitchen. The next morning I laid the phone on the kitchen counter, opened to the last message he sent Chelsea. "Soon, baby. I promise." Jake stumbled in, hair a mess, rubbing his face. "What's all this?" he mumbled. I didn't say a word. Just pushed the phone toward him. He picked it up, scrolled, face draining of all color. Then he set it down like it might explode. "Emily, let me explain." "Explain what?" "That while I was under anesthesia, hoping to wake up and come back to you, you were planning to build a life with someone else. That you asked another woman to marry you while doctors were literally fighting to keep me alive." He opened and closed his mouth. I almost laughed. "Who even are you, Jake? The man who held my hand before surgery? Or the man who picked out dessert with his mistress that same night?" He tried to come closer. I stepped back so hard my stitches burned. "Don't," I hissed. "Don't you dare touch me." 6. His excuses unravel. He sank into a chair, head in hands. "You were going to die, Emily. They told me you might not make it. I was scared. So you proposed to Chelsea for comfort. You put a ring on her finger just in case you needed a quick replacement for your dying wife." His silence was the only answer I needed. "You know what the worst part is, Jake. I survived. And now you have to live with that. Every day, you'll look at me and remember the vows you broke before they even had a chance to become memories." 7. The final decision. He begged for forgiveness. Said he was confused, stressed. The doctors made it sound hopeless. But trust, once shattered, doesn't glue itself back together. It leaves shards under your skin, bleeding at the slightest pressure. I packed a small bag that afternoon. Called my cousin Lauren, who pulled up with a grin that promised legal war if necessary. Leo rode in his carrier, blinking golden eyes that said he'd follow me anywhere. As we drove away, Jake stood on the porch, shoulders slumped. I didn't wave. The truest heartbeat. That night, curled on Lauren's guest bed, Leo tucked against my side, I listened to my own heartbeat. Strong. Unapologetic. Not beating for Jake or Chelsea or the life I thought I had. Beating for me. I whispered into the dark, a promise to myself. He signed a future with someone else. But I survived to reclaim mine. Outside, crickets chirped a tiny orchestra. My pulse joined them, a stubborn percussion that said, "Still here. Still living. Still choosing." Part 6. How do you heal from a life that wasn't yours? There's a saying that when you leave someone, you're not just leaving them, you're leaving the life you thought you had. The future you built in your head. The dinners, the vacations, the inside jokes that only made sense to the two of you. You're abandoning all those versions of yourself that only existed because of them. It's brutal. But sometimes it's the only way to keep breathing. 1. Moving boxes and unraveling memories. Lauren let me crash at her place for a week. Long enough to find an apartment close to downtown, close to my physical therapy sessions, close to a coffee shop where no one knew me as Jake's wife. Packing was a slow, surgical process. Each drawer, each closet felt like a biopsy, pulling out pieces of my former life and deciding what was benign enough to keep. I left half the kitchen stuff. Jake could have it. The throw pillows we picked out together on our honeymoon. I couldn't stomach them. The hardest was the photo albums. Wedding shots where we laughed under fairy lights. Cakes smeared on noses. Pictures of us at that cabin in Vermont, bundled in scarves, mugs of hot cider. I flipped each page with a tenderness that disgusted me. It wasn't just nostalgia. It was grief for a marriage that had died long before my body almost did. I kept 3 photos. One of Leo as a kitten, one of my parents visiting us that first Christmas, and one of me alone on a pier, hair whipped wild by salt wind. I didn't recognize that girl. I wanted to. To the physical therapy sessions. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my heart had proven unkillable, The rest of my body was still a battlefield. Twice a week I hauled myself to PT, learning to rebuild muscles sliced by scalpels. My scars itched and tugged, bright pink reminders of the night I lay on an operating table while Jake poured champagne for someone else. My therapist, a kind woman named Marissa, never pried. But one day as I balanced awkwardly on a Bosu ball, she asked gently, "Got anyone helping you at home?" "Just my cat," I said with a hollow laugh. He paused, studying me. "Well, cats make good nurses. They don't tell you to get over it before you're ready." 3 messages from ghosts. Jake texted me 3 times that first week. Jake: "I miss you. We can fix this." Jake: "I was scared, Em. I was losing you. I panicked." Jake: "Please don't throw us away." It was darkly funny. He was the one who tried to throw me away, or at least move on from me before the paperwork was official. And yet here he was, acting like I was the one holding the knife. I typed replies more than once. Long, blistering paragraphs about betrayal, about the woman who trusted him enough to let a surgeon open her up while he opened up his heart to someone else. But I never hit send. I deleted them all. Silence became my loudest boundary. 4 nights in the new apartment. My new apartment was tiny, with drafty windows and questionable plumbing. But it was mine. I bought a ridiculous, oversized mug that said, "Still here, bitch," and filled it with chamomile tea every night. Leo adjusted faster than I did. He claimed the single armchair, batting at dust motes like he'd been waiting his whole life for this exact sunbeam. Sometimes I envied him. Cats didn't wonder if their lives had been built on lies. The bed felt huge without Jake's weight beside me. I'd curl around a pillow, let the emptiness echo. The old me would have spiraled. But now the silence felt like a promise. No secrets whispered to someone else. No hidden texts lighting up in the dark. Just me and my traitorous but stubbornly beating heart. 5. The medical bills and the legal bombshell. A week later, I met with a hospital administrator about my insurance forms. She gently slid a stack of papers across the desk. "Your husband had pre-signed consent for hospice arrangements in case you didn't wake up. We needed to finalize billing codes." I blinked at her. Hospice. He was already planning end-of-life care before I even flatlined. She gave me a cautious look. It's not uncommon for spouses to prepare, emotionally, legally. But most wait until after physicians give final prognosis. My chest clenched. This wasn't fear or betrayal anymore. It was anger so pure it felt cold. Jake had made sure he was legally ready to bury me the second it became convenient. Maybe that sounded practical to an outsider. But to me, it was a betrayal more cutting than any scalpel. Lauren was furious when I told her, "We're getting a lawyer. He may have broken no criminal laws, but there's a mountain of civil leverage here. Let's make sure he doesn't profit from your survival." 6. Finding pieces of myself he couldn't reach. It was small stuff that started stitching me back together. Buying a bright red jacket that Jake once would have called too loud. Cooking curry at 1 a.m. just because I felt like it. Blasting music and dancing like an idiot in the kitchen with Leo perched on the counter, judging me. Sometimes I'd catch myself smiling for no reason and feel guilty, like happiness was cheating on my own pain. But I kept doing it anyway. One evening while folding laundry, I whispered to the quiet, "Thank you for not dying." Took me a second to realize I meant myself. 7. Running into Lena. 3 weeks later, I ran into Lena at the grocery store. She looked ghostly, dark circles under her eyes. When she saw me, she flinched so hard she nearly dropped her basket. "Emily, I didn't expect." "You didn't expect me to be here," I finished for her, voice calm, almost gentle. "Alive." Tears pooled instantly. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted. But you did nothing to stop it either." She sobbed right there between the yogurt and the oat milk. I didn't comfort her. Eventually she fled, leaving her half-full cart abandoned. I stood there for a long time, hand on Leo's favorite treats, pulse steady, not even shaking. Ate Leo's steady heartbeat and my own. That night, Leo crawled onto my chest as I lay on the couch. His purr rumbled against my sternum, syncing with my own heart. A simple primal affirmation that I was still here, still warm, still wanted by someone, even if that someone had 4 paws. I exhaled, long and shaky. My lungs didn't catch. My heart didn't stutter. The human body is a remarkable machine, designed to keep going even when the soul is a shredded flag in a hurricane. 9. A promise made quietly. I promised myself something then. Not that I'd never be hurt again. Life didn't work that way. But that I'd never let someone else decide my value. My worth wouldn't hinge on who held my hand in a hospital room, or who was willing to sign a paper to end me. My pulse was my own. Beat for me. 10. The miracle no one got to claim. People kept calling my survival a miracle. They pointed to charts, probability graphs, risk factors. They told me how lucky I was. As if luck had anything to do with it. It wasn't luck. It wasn't divine intervention orchestrated by Jake's bedside tears, because he hadn't even stayed. It was me. My lungs, my will, my stubborn spark that refused to snuff out just to make someone else's life easier to rearrange. And in the silent dark of my tiny apartment, I smiled. Not for Jake. Not in spite of him. But for every new morning that was mine alone. Part 7. When healing is a private, messy revolution. People think healing is like the movies. That one day you just decide to be okay. The sun shines, the montage music swells, and suddenly you're laughing on a patio with your friends, your hair catching the breeze in slow motion. But that's bullshit. Real healing is a series of awkward stumbles. It's crying into the sink while washing a mug he once loved. It's telling yourself you're fine, only to find yourself on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later because your body refuses to believe your mouth. 1. Grocery store ghosts. A month after I moved into my new apartment, I ventured into a different grocery store, on the far side of town, hoping it wouldn't echo with memories. Didn't. Not exactly. But grief has a cruel sense of humor. I reached for a jar of marinara, and a man down the aisle was laughing, low and familiar, into his phone. For one heart-stopping second I was sure it was Jake. My throat closed up. I could almost feel his arm loop around my waist, the press of his lips into my hair as he murmured, "Red sauce tonight, em?" But the man turned. Not Jake. Just some stranger with better posture and a more sincere smile. I stood there for an embarrassing amount of time, hands still hovering over jars, fighting tears. A small child zipped past me, giggling, and bumped my leg. It startled me enough to laugh, the sound raw and awkward but real. 2 nightmares that peel scabs. Nights were harder. I'd wake tangled in sweat-soaked sheets, the phantom of a ring tightening on my finger. In the dream, it was always the same. Jake slipping a band onto my hand, then pulling it off and placing it on someone else's while I screamed soundlessly. Leo would leap onto the bed, batting at my hair until I calmed down. I whispered secrets into his fur. I hate that I still miss him sometimes. I hate that my body flinches for him, even though my mind knows better. Cats are merciful. They don't judge. He'd just purr louder, as if trying to drown out all the places inside me that still hoped for an apology that would fix the past. 3 small rebellions. But grief didn't get to keep everything. I started collecting tiny acts of rebellion, buying daisies instead of roses because Jake thought daisies were too basic. Painting my toenails neon blue, a color he once teased was trashy. I rewatched all the cheesy horror movies he mocked. I made pasta drowning in garlic. I adopted a second cat, a chunky orange tabby from the shelter named Miso. He took to Leo instantly, and the 2 of them became little orange and gray bookends on my couch, watching me rebuild my life. One night I caught myself laughing, genuinely belly deep, at Miso chasing a rogue sock across the floor. The sound startled me. It was like hearing your favorite song on the radio after years of static. For the inevitable relapse. Of course there were setbacks. Healing isn't linear. It's more like a drunk guy trying to walk a tightrope. One evening I got curious stupid and searched Chelsea's Instagram. Her profile was private, but her bio read, Engaged, blessed beyond words. I slammed my phone down so hard it skittered across the floor. My hands shook. He'd moved on that fast. Or maybe he'd never left her at all. I paced my apartment for an hour, heartbeat slamming, whispering, "Don't let this kill you again." He already tried once. When my chest finally unclenched, I realized something profound. I was still here, still breathing, still defying every line of his selfish new story. 5. Running into mutual friends. It happened in the weirdest place. A home improvement store. I was pricing out tiny potted succulents when I heard, "Emily." Oh my God, Em. It was Sierra, an old friend from college who had been at our wedding. Her eyes went wide, darted to the faint scar that peeked above my blouse. Could tell she knew. Everyone did. How are you?" she stammered. My mouth curled into something halfway between a smile and a grimace. "Alive." Her relief was almost comical. She hugged me so tight it pulled at my stitches. I winced but didn't stop her. We all thought. Well, we didn't know what to think. "And then what happened with Jake?" She trailed off. He nodded. "Yeah. Turns out surviving a tumor was the easy part." Her eyes welled up. "You're amazing, you know that?" "I'm stubborn," I corrected. "But I'll take it." 6. A letter I never sent. A few weeks later, in a fit of masochism, I wrote Jake a letter. Not to send, I'm not that naive anymore. But to bleed out all the words stuck between my ribs. "Dear Jake, you thought signing that paper would be the end of us. You thought proposing to her would write me out of your life story. You forgot I'm not that easy to erase. My heart beat for me when you wouldn't. My lungs pulled in air you thought was wasted. I survived your decision. I survived you. That's something neither of us gets to forget. Emily." I folded the paper into a tiny square and burned it over my kitchen sink. The ash floated down like dirty snow. Watching it vanish felt cleaner than any apology he could have offered. 7 mornings that don't hurt as much. Slowly, mornings started to taste sweeter. I'd wake to sunlight spilling across the floor, Leo batting my face because he wanted breakfast, miso curled into the crook of my knees. I'd sit by my tiny kitchen table with coffee that was exactly how I liked it. Too strong, a splash of oat milk, and read for pleasure again. Not legal documents, not discharge papers. Just novels that carried me away to places where betrayal wasn't the climax of every story. And sometimes I'd pause, mug warm in my hands, pulse steady, and realize I didn't think about him today. Not once. It's the real heartbeat miracle. Doctors still call my survival miraculous. They show my scans at conferences, marvel at how quickly my organs rallied, how my vitals stabilized minutes after the odds all but flatlined. They credit medicine, or divine intervention, or sheer biological stubbornness. But I know better. My body didn't fight to stay because of Jake. It fought because somewhere deep inside, a wilder, smarter part of me knew I had more chapters left. Chapters without him. 9. Saying goodbye without needing him there. One rainy afternoon, I drove past the old house. Not to see him. He was likely at work or wrapped up in his perfect new life. I just needed to witness that it still existed, even without me in it. The garden was overgrown. The porch paint peeled. It looked less like a life stolen from me, and more like a stage set I'd once performed on. I whispered through my open window, "Goodbye." Not to him. Not even to us. To the version of me who thought she couldn't breathe without him. 10. The unpromised promise. That night, curled up with Leo and miso, I pressed a hand to my chest. My heart thudded back. Patient, forgiving, still mine. "Keep going," I whispered. "Just keep going." Because death didn't win. Neither did he. And every stubborn beat was proof that the story was still mine to tell. Part 8. Dreaming without permission. There's a particular kind of guilt that follows surviving something you didn't think you would. It stalks you through quiet rooms and curls up in the sheets beside you at night. It whispers that you're ungrateful for still wanting more. More days, more laughter, more beauty, when so many people didn't get a second chance at all. I spent weeks after the confrontation with Jake stuck in that fog. Every time I let myself imagine a future, traveling, falling in love again, even just planting tomatoes on a balcony, I felt a nasty little voice hissing. How dare you? You almost died. Be satisfied with enough. But enough never was my style. 1. The little list. Started with a list. Lauren gave me a floral notebook as a kind of joke gift, with "You got this" stamped across the cover in gold foil. Write grocery lists, poetry, your future wedding vows, whatever you want. Just promise me you'll fill it with something that isn't him. So one morning, after brewing coffee that smelled like possibility, I wrote at the top of the first page, things I still want. See the northern lights. Learn Italian. Get a tiny meaningful tattoo. Dance barefoot at 2 a.m. with someone who means it. Feel safe in my own skin again. I stared at that last line for a long time. Felt so big. Bigger than any tumor. Bigger than Jake's betrayal. 2. An accidental kindness. A week later, I decided to finally use the gym in my apartment building. Just the treadmill, nothing ambitious. But halfway through a slow walk, I felt dizzy. My scar ached in a deep, insistent way. I slumped against the wall, trying not to panic. A stranger, mid-30s, curly hair and a shy smile, appeared beside me holding out a bottle of water. You okay? You looked a little, wobbly. Took it breathless. Surgery stuff. Still figuring out how far I can push. His face softened. You're doing great, honestly. We're here. That's huge. That sentence, "You're here, that's huge," echoed in my skull all day. It wasn't flirtation. Just simple, unvarnished kindness. It was stunning how starved I was for that. 3. Cooking for one, and liking it. That night I decided to actually cook, instead of microwaving sad single-serve dinners. I poured myself a glass of white wine, put on Nina Simone, and danced around my tiny kitchen stirring risotto. Leo and miso chased each other between my ankles. For the first time in forever, I didn't think about what Jake would have said. About carbs, about messes, about me humming off-key. I just existed happily, in that little golden moment of garlic and butter and jazzy piano. When I sat down alone to eat, it wasn't lonely. It was luxurious. For messages that no longer mattered. Around that same time, Jake texted again. Jake. Emily, please. Can we talk? I made a mistake. I was scared. You're my wife. I still love you. I stared at my screen, feeling exactly nothing. No anger. No longing. Not even the old knee-jerk ache that used to clench my chest when his name popped up. I deleted the thread without replying. For the first time, it wasn't an act of strength. It was just obvious. Like closing the fridge door on spoiled milk. 5. The travel brochure. A few days later, while grabbing mail downstairs, I found a glossy travel brochure someone else must have dropped. It was for Iceland. Blazing green auroras across an obsidian sky. I carried it back upstairs, smoothed the pages out on my coffee table, and let myself imagine. Not with someone. Just me. Bundled in a red parka, breath fogging in air that smelled like ice and volcanic ash, eyes wide under a heaven that was literally dancing. My heart gave a funny little lurch. Good one. Like it was whispering, see? Still here. Still beating for more. 6. The tattoos we choose. 2 weeks later, I walked into a tiny tattoo shop on the edge of town. The artist's name was Ray, a soft-voiced woman with half her head shaved and flowers inked all down her arms. What are we thinking today? She asked, her pen poised. I lifted my shirt slightly to show her my scar. Something that makes me feel like I claimed this. Not like it was forced on me. She traced her gloved finger near it, thoughtful. How about a tiny heartbeat line? Right alongside. A declaration that you're still here. Tears pricked my eyes. Yes, exactly that. Hurt, of course. But it was a different hurt. Chosen one. I watched that thin line of ink bloom on my skin, right next to the seam where surgeons once fought to keep me. This time I had chosen to mark my own survival. 7. The quiet mornings that healed more than therapy. Some mornings I still woke tangled in old fears. Heart racing. Hands clammy. The ghost of Jake's laugh echoing in my head. But those moments faded quicker now. Leo would crawl up, head-butting my chin, while Miso yawned like a tiny lion. I breathe out slow. Run fingers over the new tattoo. Remind myself. That scar means you stayed. That line means you chose to stay. I started writing again. Not just lists, actual little essays. About what betrayal does to the nervous system. About how forgiveness isn't always noble. Sometimes it's just letting yourself stop caring. About how survival is a quieter, messier miracle than any movie ever shows. 8. A dream that didn't end in sweat. About 3 months post-surgery, I had a dream where I was standing in the middle of a crowded street festival. Live music, lights strung up between buildings, people laughing all around me. In the dream, I didn't look for Jake. I didn't scan faces for old ghosts. I just closed my eyes, tilted my head back, and let confetti rain down on me. I woke up smiling so wide it hurt. That morning I made pancakes for no reason other than I wanted them. Sat on the floor with my cats. Played songs Jake would have hated. And felt lighter than I had in years. 9. The miracle was never about him. People still tilt their heads when they hear my story. They say, "Wow, it's incredible you survived. He must feel so guilty." Or, "It's crazy that your heart just refused to give up." They never realize the miracle wasn't about him at all. My heart didn't beat so he could keep me. It beat because somewhere deep in my marrow, I still believed there were days like this. Quiet mornings, silly cats, ridiculous tattoos, worth living for. 10. A promise to no one but myself. One evening, I stood by my apartment window watching rain trace little rivers down the glass. I pressed my hand to my chest, felt the steady rhythm there, and whispered, "I promise I won't waste you." I didn't mean waste it, the heart meant me. The life it was so determined to keep alive. The person it wanted me to become, with or without anyone to witness it. Because death didn't win. Neither did betrayal. And every day since then has been a victory. Quiet and mine alone. Part 9. When the world becomes yours again. There's a certain tilt the world takes on after you almost lose it. Color seems sharper, air seems colder or sweeter. Small pleasures taste exaggerated. Like life itself is trying to seduce you into staying awake for it. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And living meant letting my story grow roots somewhere outside the shadow of everything Jake nearly stole from me. 1. The decision that terrified me. Started with a dare. Not from anyone else. God knows most people still treated me like delicate glass. It was a dare from myself. One morning I was sipping coffee at my tiny kitchen table. Leo sprawled on my lap, Miso clawing at a stray bread twist tie. The Iceland travel brochure I'd saved was spread out before me. I ran my fingers over the pictures of black sand beaches, steaming blue lagoons, skies rioting with green and pink auroras. My heart did this anxious little flip. For months, it had only done that out of trauma. Fear spikes, nightmares, memories of cold or lights. But this was different. This was thrill. Why not go? Because it's reckless. 'Cause you were just cut open. Because you shouldn't want something this big yet. I closed my eyes and listened to my pulse. Steady. Defiant. Hungry. So I booked it. A 1-week tour. No +1. Tube telling Lauren. When I told Lauren, her jaw dropped. Alone. You're actually going by yourself. Shrugged. Yeah. I almost died waiting for someone else to hold my hand. If I want to see the northern lights, I'm not asking permission. She burst out laughing, then pulled me into the fiercest hug. Proud of you, Em. Just be safe. Send me photos every day or I'll call Icelandic police. 3. Fear at the airport. The airport was a minefield of flashbacks. It smelled of overpriced pretzels and jet fuel, but somewhere underneath was the scent of memories I didn't want. Jake's hand on my lower back, his voice murmuring, "Relax, babe. I've got this." Now it was just me. My own passport, my own boarding pass. I was shaking so badly the TSA agent gave me a worried look. But I made it through security. Made it to the gate. Made it onto the plane. And when the engines roared and the ground fell away beneath us, I closed my eyes and whispered, "We're doing this. All of us." My heart answered with a strong, clean thump. Ford, the land of fire and ice. Iceland didn't care that my marriage imploded, that I had a scar along my ribs or a fresh tattoo over my heart. It was a land that laughed at human messes, earth that split open to spill molten rock, glaciers that crushed mountains under indifferent weight. The first time I saw the aurora, I cried. Not pretty tears. Ugly, hiccuping sobs that startled the older German couple standing next to me on the tour bus. Because no one tells you that when you see something that magnificent, you have to let something else go to make room for it. I think in that moment, I finally let go of the last version of my old life. I let it drift up into the green lights and vanish. 5. A quiet confession to strangers. One night, sitting in a hot spring with strangers from 6 different countries, we all started trading pieces of ourselves. A retired nurse from Toronto confessed she'd left an abusive marriage at 60. A young guy from Spain admitted he'd tried to end his life 2 years earlier. And me. I found myself blurting out. My husband proposed to someone else while I was in surgery. They didn't think I'd survive. But I did. There was silence. Then the nurse reached over, squeezed my hand under the warm water. Survival is its own kind of holy, even if you have to claw for it. I laughed. It echoed off the surrounding rocks, weird and bright. That sound, I decided, was what being alive truly meant. 6. The tattoo becomes a conversation. At a little cafe in Reykjavik, a barista saw my small heartbeat tattoo and said in halting English, "Yours. Or for someone else?" Smiled. "Mine." A reminder that I chose to keep going. She gave me a look so soft it almost cracked my ribs again. Good. Best reason. I carried that with me for days. 7 Letters to a future me. On the flight home, I started a note on my phone. It wasn't to Jake or even to Lauren. It was to me 5 years from now. Dear Emily, if you're reading this and your life looks boring and safe, good. But I hope it's also still curious. I hope you still book flights on a dare. I hope you let good people hold your heart without squeezing it. I hope you dance barefoot in your kitchen even if there's no one to watch. Remember what it felt like under the aurora. Remember that you did this alone. Love. The version of you who survived. Coming home to different air. When I unlocked my apartment door, Leo and Miso bombarded me with headbutts and meows. I dropped my bags, sank onto the floor, and let them climb me like I was their personal Everest. The place smelled like home now. Candle wax, cat fur, the faint citrus of my soap. No trace of Jake. No hidden rot. Exhaled. Not shakily. Not fearfully. Just exhaled. "We're okay," I whispered to my little audience of 2. Better than okay. 9 Seeing myself as whole. A few days later, standing in front of my bathroom mirror, I turned sideways and traced the scar along my ribs. Then I let my fingers move to the tattoo. The 2 were so close they nearly touched. One proof of someone trying to end my story, the other proof I'd taken it back. It was weirdly beautiful. Like punctuation marks. A period and then a brand new sentence. 10 A closing nobody else gets to write. People still gossip about what happened. How my husband moved on so fast. How I miraculously pulled through. They call it tragic, then extraordinary, then tragic again. But none of them live in my bones. None of them get to narrate this. I lay in bed that night with Leo purring by my hip, Miso snoring at my feet, and I realized, this is my story. Not his. Not the doctor's. Not the people whispering over grocery carts. And in that quiet, stubborn heartbeat echoing through my chest, I heard the truest line of all. Death didn't win. Neither did betrayal. I did. Part 10. Speaking to whoever needs it. If you're watching this or reading it, or just hearing it play in the background while you wash dishes or fold laundry or sit in a parking lot trying to build up the courage to go inside, then this is for you. Because I know what it's like to live in the shadow of someone else's choices. To have your entire world orbit a person who didn't deserve it. To realize that loving someone doesn't mean they're worth your heart. And to wake up one day, in a hospital bed or on a lonely couch, or at the bottom of your own guilt, and realize you're completely alone with the echo of your own breathing. The days that nobody sees. They never show these parts in movies. The days you stare at your phone, fingers hovering over a contact you swear you deleted. The nights you pull the covers over your head to muffle the sob that claws up your throat. The mornings you flinch at your own reflection, because somehow betrayal makes you feel uglier, even when you know it shouldn't. I had plenty of those days. More than I've admitted here. Days where I thought about texting Jake. Not because I wanted him back, but because some twisted part of me craved his guilt, his apologies, his proof that what he did was monstrous. But eventually I realized those were just new chains. Different links on the same leash. So I stopped, chose silence. And it turned out silence is where your own voice starts to echo back. 2. The strange grief of surviving. No one warns you about the grief that comes with surviving. People congratulate you. They call you lucky. They say God must have a plan. But sometimes you wish someone had asked, "Are you angry to still be here?" 'Cause I was. For a while. I was angry that my heart kept beating when it had been treated like such disposable cargo. Angry that I was the one who had to pick up the pieces, pay the bills, fill the fridge, learn to sleep in a cold bed, while Jake got to write a brand new love story without any of the messy prologue. Angry that I woke up at all when maybe it would have been easier not to. But grief is a weird animal. It sheds its fur in layers. And eventually, all I was left holding was gratitude. Messy, tear-stained, hard-won gratitude. 3. Why my heartbeat matters more than ever. Sometimes late at night, I lie on my side, hand pressed over my tattoo and the scar that kisses its edge. I whisper to myself, "This is yours. This heartbeat is yours." Because that's what matters now. Not who didn't choose me. Not who betrayed me. Not what was said in dark restaurants or written in text threads I wish I'd never read. My heartbeat is mine. Gets to decide when it stops. And until then, it belongs to me. To my dreams, to my cats, to my kitchen dances, to my future travels, to the quiet mornings that make me close my eyes and sigh just because it feels so clean to breathe. For what I would tell the old me. If I could sit across from the woman I was, the one lying on a gurney clutching Jake's hand, terrified she'd never wake up, I wouldn't tell her to run. I wouldn't ruin her last moments of blind hope. I'd just take her hand, squeeze it, and whisper, "It's going to hurt. More than you think. But it will also heal. And you will get to keep something Jake never could. Your integrity. Your fierce, battered, unkillable heart." And then I'd hug her and maybe we'd both cry. 5. For anyone listening who's been there. So if you've ever been the person someone else bet against, if you've ever been left behind, signed off, written out of a future that was supposed to be yours, I want you to know. Their decision doesn't define your worth. Their lack of loyalty doesn't diminish your magic. Their inability to love you properly is their loss, not a verdict on your value. I promise you, you will stand in a kitchen someday, humming off-key, stirring sauce that only you will eat, and it will taste like victory. You will wake up in a bed that doesn't smell like them, stretch your legs, and realize your body is yours again. You will press your hand to your chest and smile at the solid, defiant thump beneath your palm. 6. The legacy of my survival. They call my medical file a miracle. They say I should have coded out. That patients with my stats don't usually wake up without brain damage. That even fewer walk out of the ICU without a long-term device. But what they don't chart, what no lab value or scan ever could, is the part of me that refused to quit for reasons that had nothing to do with Jake or my old life or even the doctors who fought so hard to keep me here. I think I stayed because deep down, I believed there was a chapter waiting for me that didn't involve being betrayed or abandoned or reduced to someone else's sad story. A chapter that would be messy, loud, maybe still a little lonely, but undeniably, gloriously mine. 7. Death didn't win, and neither did he. So here it is, plain and simple. Death didn't win. Neither did betrayal. Neither did the man who thought he could build a new forever before my body was even cold. I did. Every morning my heart kicks into gear, I win again. Every laugh, every awkward date I might try one day, every plane ticket I buy on a whim, every cat I adopt, every poem I scribble at 2 a.m., that's me winning. 8. My final promise and invitation. So if you're still here with me, still listening to my story, I want to end with this. Promise yourself you'll stay. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because something beautiful might still be coming. I don't know what mine will look like yet. Maybe it's more travel. Maybe it's fostering kittens. Maybe it's just growing old in peace, loving sunrises and fresh bread in tiny bookstores. But it's coming. And that's enough for me. I hope it becomes enough for you too. 9. A quiet goodbye that isn't really goodbye. So I'll say it one last time, mostly for me. Death didn't win. Neither did he. And every stubborn, laughing, hopeful beat of my heart proves it. Thank you for letting me tell my story. I hope you find the courage to keep telling yours.